There is an ancient principle of warfare that Ukrainian combat engineers have elevated to an art form in this war. The weapon you cannot see is the weapon you cannot defeat. A sniper can be located by his muzzle flash. A drone can be spotted on radar. An artillery battery can be tracked by its sound signature. But a mine buried in the earth, silent, patient, invisible, waits with perfect discipline until the moment a boot or a tire or a tank track presses the ground above it. And then it kills with the same certainty it waited with. Just days ago, on the Eastern Front in Ukraine, Ukrainian combat engineers demonstrated a new evolution of this ancient weapon. A mine warfare operation so sophisticated, so layered, and so psychologically devastating that it did not just kill Russian soldiers and destroy Russian vehicles. It broke the confidence of an entire Russian formation in the ground beneath their feet. Ground they had checked, ground they had cleared, ground they believed was safe, because the mines Ukrainian engineers had planted were designed to lie dormant for days before activating, turning terrain that Russian sappers had certified as clean into a killing field that woke up when the sappers were gone and the convoys were rolling. This is the story of the Mine Symphony, and the 3 days that turned a routine Russian troop rotation into one of the deadliest sequences of the month. The operation began with a problem that Ukrainian commanders on this section of the front had been studying for weeks. Russian forces held a network of positions approximately 3 kilometers east of the Ukrainian front line, a garrison of roughly 400 soldiers that had been in place for over 2 months and was due for rotation. Intelligence indicated that a fresh battalion was being assembled in the Russian rear to replace them, and that the rotation would occur within days. Rotations are vulnerable moments. They require large numbers of soldiers and vehicles to move through predictable corridors, the roads and paths that connect rear staging areas to forward positions. During a rotation, both the outgoing and incoming units are in transit simultaneously, creating a period of maximum vulnerability when neither the old garrison nor the new one is fully deployed in defensive positions. Ukrainian planners saw an opportunity, not just to harass the rotation with strikes, but to make the rotation impossible. To mine the corridors so thoroughly, so cleverly, and with such technical sophistication that Russian forces could not move through them without catastrophic losses, and could not clear them without losses of their own. The engineering plan was unlike anything Russian forces in this sector had encountered. It involved 3 types of mines deployed in 3 overlapping layers across 4 square kilometers of terrain spanning the approaches to the Russian positions. The first layer was conventional, anti-tank mines buried on and alongside the 3 roads that Russian vehicles used to access the forward positions. These mines were placed in the classic patterns, staggered across the road surface, buried at depth, with pressure plates calibrated to detonate under the weight of armored vehicles and heavy trucks. Russian sappers would expect these. They would look for them. They would find some of them. This layer was designed to be partially detected, to make the Russians believe they had found and cleared the threat. The second layer was more subtle. Anti-personnel mines and tripwire-activated fragmentation devices placed along the bypass routes that Russian soldiers and vehicles would use when the roads were blocked. Ukrainian engineers had studied Russian movement patterns for weeks and identified the specific field paths, drainage ditches, and secondary tracks that Russian convoys diverted to when the primary roads were mined or damaged. These bypass routes were now mined, but with smaller, harder-to-detect devices buried deeper and camouflaged with a precision that came from months of experience in mine warfare. The third layer was the masterstroke, and the element that would turn this operation from a standard mining effort into something that Russian forces had never encountered: delayed activation mines. These were devices fitted with timer mechanisms that kept the mine inert for 48 to 72 hours after placement. During that dormancy period, the mine would not detonate even if a vehicle drove directly over it, or a soldier stepped on the pressure plate. It was, for all practical purposes, invisible, not just to the eye but to mine detection equipment, which would register no active fuse signature. The delayed mines were placed in the areas that Russian sappers would check first: the road surfaces themselves, the shoulders, the obvious choke points. Ukrainian engineers knew that Russian mine-clearing teams would sweep these areas before approving the rotation routes. They knew the sappers would find some conventional mines from the first layer and remove them. They knew the sappers would report the routes as cleared, and they knew that 2 to 3 days later, after the rotation had begun, after the convoys were rolling, after the Russian command had relaxed its vigilance, the delayed mines would activate and begin killing. Stay with this. The engineering work alone took 7 nights, and what happened when the mines woke up was worse than anything the Russian formation had experienced in months. The mining operation was executed over 7 consecutive nights by Ukrainian combat engineering teams working in shifts. Each night, a team of 8 to 12 engineers crossed into the contested zone between the front lines. 4 square kilometers of muddy fields, rural roads, and drainage channels that separated the Ukrainian and Russian positions. The early spring conditions worked in their favor. Nights were dark, the damp ground was soft enough for easy digging, and the thin fog that settled over the fields after midnight provided additional concealment. The engineers carried their equipment on their backs: mines, detonators, timer mechanisms, digging tools, camouflage materials, and navigation equipment. Each team member carried approximately 30 to 40 kilograms of gear across terrain that was itself dangerous. The no-man's land between the lines was periodically swept by Russian surveillance drones and illuminated by flares. The teams moved in silence, communicated by hand signals, and worked by touch in the darkness, burying mines by feel, calibrating pressure plates without light, setting timer mechanisms to the precise delay intervals calculated by the planners. Over 7 nights, the engineering teams placed an estimated 250 to 300 mines across the 4 square kilometer area. The placement was not random. Each mine was positioned according to a detailed plan that accounted for Russian movement patterns, vehicle types, predicted bypass routes, and the sequencing of the delayed activation timers. The plan ensured that the conventional mines would be encountered first, triggering Russian mine-clearing operations that would find and remove approximately 30 to 40% of the first-layer devices, giving the sappers confidence that the area was being cleared effectively. Then the delayed mines would wake up, and the ground that Russian sappers had certified as clean would start killing again. The Russian rotation began on schedule, approximately 10 days after the Ukrainian mining operation commenced. The first movement was a reconnaissance patrol, a small team of Russian sappers and infantry sent to verify the routes before the main convoys moved. The patrol found mines on the primary road within the first kilometer. 6 anti-tank mines detected and removed. They swept the road for another 2 kilometers, found 4 more mines, and reported the route as cleared after a 6-hour operation. The first supply convoy, 8 vehicles including trucks and armored support, departed the Russian rear staging area the following morning. Which layer of the mine system was most ingenious? A. Conventional road mines, the expected threat. B. Bypass route mines, targeting the detour. C. Delayed activation mines, turning cleared ground into a trap. D. All 3 together as a system. Tell us in the comments. The convoy made it 4 kilometers before the lead truck hit an anti-tank mine on the road surface. A mine that had not been there when the sappers checked 20 hours earlier. It was a delayed activation device, now armed, buried at the exact center of the lane that the sappers had walked without incident the previous day. The explosion destroyed the truck and killed the driver and passenger. The convoy halted. Russian sappers were called forward to re-clear the road. They found 2 more activated delayed mines within the next 300 meters, mines that their detection equipment had not registered the day before because the fuses had been inert. The sappers were shaken. They had cleared this road. They had certified it. And now mines were appearing on ground they had personally walked. The sappers cleared the newly activated mines and reported the road passable again. The convoy resumed movement, cautiously now at walking pace, with sappers on foot ahead of the vehicles. 300 meters further, the lead vehicle, an armored personnel carrier now positioned ahead of the trucks for protection, detonated a conventional anti-tank mine on the road shoulder. The APC was immobilized, its right track destroyed, the crew stunned but alive. The convoy halted again. The Russian formation commander, receiving increasingly alarming reports from the convoy, ordered the vehicles to divert to a secondary route, a field path that bypassed the mined road section. The first 2 vehicles made it through. The third, a heavy truck loaded with ammunition and rations, hit an anti-personnel mine on the path shoulder. The mine was too small to destroy the truck, but the explosion wounded 2 soldiers riding on the vehicle's exterior and forced another halt. When dismounted infantry attempted to sweep the bypass route on foot, 3 soldiers triggered tripwire-activated fragmentation devices within a 20-meter stretch. 2 were killed instantly. The third lost both legs below the knee. By the end of the first day, the convoy had advanced less than 5 kilometers. 3 vehicles were destroyed or immobilized. 7 soldiers were dead and 11 wounded, from mines alone, without a single Ukrainian soldier firing a shot. The convoy withdrew to the staging area to regroup. The Russian command ordered a comprehensive mine-clearing operation before attempting the rotation again. Over the next 24 hours, Russian sappers, reinforced by additional engineering teams pulled from other sectors, swept the primary road, the secondary routes, and a broad area on either side. They found and removed dozens of conventional mines. They probed the ground with detection equipment and manual prodding rods. They declared the area cleared, again, and reported to the formation commander that the routes were safe for movement. On the third day, the rotation convoy attempted the journey again, a larger force this time, with mine-resistant vehicles in the lead and sappers walking ahead at intervals. They made it 6 kilometers, past the point where the first convoy had been stopped, before the delayed mines from the third layer began detonating. The first explosion destroyed a mine-resistant vehicle that had driven over a device the sappers had walked across minutes earlier. The mine had activated overnight, its 72-hour timer having elapsed precisely during the convoy's passage. The second explosion, 300 meters further, hit a tank that had been brought forward specifically to provide heavy armored protection for the convoy. The anti-tank mine, buried deep and fitted with a tilt rod fuse designed to trigger against heavy tracked vehicles, detonated under the tank's belly, the weakest armor point. The blast penetrated the hull floor and ignited ammunition stored inside. The crew was killed. The psychological impact was devastating. Russian soldiers in the convoy, watching mine-clearing teams work the road ahead of them and still seeing vehicles destroyed on cleared ground, began refusing to advance. Intercepted communications captured Russian NCOs and junior officers arguing with their superiors, reporting that the troops would not move forward, that the ground could not be trusted, that every meter of road was potentially lethal, regardless of what the sappers said. How many mines do you think Ukrainian engineers can place in a single night? A. 20, 30. B. 40, 60. C. Over 60. The answer would terrify any sapper. Drop your thoughts below. Over 3 days, the Mine Symphony produced the following confirmed losses. Vehicles destroyed or immobilized by mines: 12, including 2 tanks, 3 armored personnel carriers, 4 trucks, 1 mine-resistant vehicle, and 2 support vehicles. Estimated vehicle replacement value: $8 to $14 million. Personnel casualties from mine detonations: approximately 90 killed or seriously wounded over 3 days, including 43 killed outright and approximately 50 wounded, many with traumatic amputations and blast injuries. Training and replacement cost: $3 to $5 million. Medical evacuation and treatment costs for the wounded: additional $1 to $2 million. Sapper casualties, killed or wounded during mine-clearing operations: an estimated 12 to 15 Russian engineers, including several experienced specialists whose loss degrades Russia's ability to conduct future mine-clearing operations in the sector. Replacement cost for trained sappers: approximately $1 to $2 million. The rotation itself was abandoned after the third day. The fresh battalion that was supposed to replace the exhausted garrison turned back to its staging area. The garrison, over 400 soldiers who had been in forward positions for over 2 months, who were tired, demoralized, running low on supplies, and expecting relief that would not come, remained in place for an additional 2 weeks until an alternative rotation route could be established and cleared. During those 2 additional weeks, Ukrainian forces conducted daily strikes on the unreinforced garrison, drone attacks, sniper operations, and artillery harassment that the exhausted defenders were increasingly unable to respond to effectively. An estimated additional 30 to 40 Russian soldiers were killed or wounded during this period, casualties directly attributable to the failed rotation caused by the Mine Symphony. Is Russia's inability to counter Ukrainian mine warfare a training failure, an equipment failure, or a failure of imagination? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now the total economics: 12 vehicles destroyed by mines, $8 to $14 million. Personnel losses from mines, 90 casualties, $3 to $5 million. Sapper losses, $1 to $2 million. Medical costs, $1 to $2 million. Failed rotation, logistical costs of the aborted operation, including fuel, vehicle wear, staging, and planning, estimated $2 to $3 million. Extended garrison deployment, 2 additional weeks of an exhausted unit in forward positions, with associated supply costs, reduced combat effectiveness, and additional casualties from Ukrainian harassment, estimated $5 to $8 million. Additional casualties during the extended deployment, 30 to 40 soldiers, $1 to $2 million. Psychological and operational impact: Russian forces in the sector now treat all ground as potentially mined, slowing movement, restricting logistics, and degrading operational tempo. Estimated operational cost over the following month of $5 to $10 million. Total estimated Russian losses, $26 to $46 million. The cost of the Ukrainian mining operation: mines, timer mechanisms, engineering team deployments over 7 nights, and supporting operations. Estimated $1 to $2 million. $2 million to inflict $46 million in damage. A cost-exchange ratio of approximately 23 to 1. And the mines that remain in the ground, the devices that were not triggered, the delayed mines that have not yet activated, the anti-personnel devices still waiting on bypass routes, continue to threaten Russian movement in the area indefinitely. The investment keeps paying dividends long after the engineers have returned to their positions. The delayed activation mine is not a new technology, but the way Ukrainian engineers have employed it, in layered systems designed to defeat mine-clearing operations, to exploit the psychological confidence that comes from believing ground has been cleared, and to turn the act of mine clearance itself into a false sense of security, represents an innovation in mine warfare that Russian forces have not found an answer to. If facts like these prove that Ukrainian combat engineers are among the most innovative fighters in this war, type truth in the comments. What should Ukraine mine next? Roads, bridges, or rail lines? Tell us below. Every road in eastern Ukraine is now a question that Russian commanders must answer before they send a convoy. Is this ground safe? The sappers say yes. But the sappers said yes last time too. And last time, mines that were not there during the sweep exploded under vehicles that were driving on certified routes. The uncertainty is corrosive. It slows every movement. It delays every rotation. It forces every convoy to crawl at walking pace behind sapper teams whose confidence in their own detection equipment has been shattered. Ukrainian combat engineers understand this. They understand that a mine does not need to explode to be effective. The possibility of a mine, the uncertainty, the fear, the knowledge that the ground might betray you at any step, is itself a weapon. And by introducing delayed activation systems that defeat clearance operations, Ukrainian engineers have taken that psychological weapon and amplified it beyond anything conventional mine warfare could achieve. 3 questions before you go. First, if delayed activation mines can defeat Russian mine-clearing operations, making ground that has been certified safe lethal again days later, how does Russia ever establish confidence in any route in eastern Ukraine? And what does that mean for its ability to sustain logistics and troop rotations? Second, the Ukrainian mining operation cost approximately $2 million and required 7 nights of engineering work. It inflicted $46 million in losses and disrupted Russian operations for weeks. If Ukraine scales this approach across hundreds of kilometers of front, how many mine-laying teams would it take to bring Russian logistics to a near-complete halt? Third, 90 Russian soldiers were killed or wounded by mines over 3 days, without a single Ukrainian soldier firing a shot. As mine warfare technology continues to evolve, how many future Russian casualties will come from enemies they never see, on ground they believed was safe? Think about that. Subscribe to Steel Command, share this video. The most patient weapon on the battlefield is buried in the ground. Silent, invisible, waiting. Ukrainian engineers have taught it new tricks. And the Russian soldiers who walk on Ukrainian soil are learning, step by step, that the earth itself is fighting against them.